Good afternoon, Mr. Cole. How the devil are you?
How are you, Ross? Nice to talk again, my boy.
Yeah, mate. We took a week off, didn't we? So
Yeah, we had a quiet week. We did, fair play.
so this one should be a classic, hopefully.
I hope so.
Let's
What
hope
have
so.
you got? What have you got cooking today?
Well, I thought this is episode 6 for us.
Is it number 6?
Number 6. So
Oh.
I thought we'd open up the conversation a bit, and there's different things that affect poets and appeal to poets. So this podcast will be called People, Places, and Poetry.
Sounds
So-
interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, we tend to write about, definitely about, I tend to write about places. I get inspired by places. People, we've touched on people before, but, they're very important. They tend to inspire us and get that pen flowing a bit. And then I thought we'd kind of let's talk about actually what it's like to be a writer, and I've spoken to some people who say that, it feels a bit like a job and it feels like work, but I mean, I'm not sure that's entirely how I feel about it. But I thought we'd actually talk about what is it like to be a writer, to have all this, all this stuff in your head and it's got to come out basically because it stays there otherwise.
Well, somebody I know, Colin Parsons, mentioned that it's a very lonely life being a writer. No, I don't find that personally. I write as and when. Caroline is usually in the room when I'm writing. I don't isolate myself. I don't sort of say to Caroline, oh, look, I got to go upstairs now, have a bit of peace and quiet. I got the telly on. I got the telly on now. It's toned down, obviously. Caroline will come in, she'll sit down on the settee and whatever, but, that type of... So I wouldn't say it's a lonely life. It's an as and when. I write every day, obviously, as you know. You probably write every day. So it's when the mood takes you. Could be the morning, afternoon, evening, or all day even. It depends what mood you're in. I like writing in the evenings, watching the telly, and I can write for about 4 hours, say from about 6 on. And yet today I was writing early this morning.
Yeah.
This type of thing. So I think it all depends. You make up really.
I tend to be, I'm probably not as regimented as you are. I tend to be a bit more sporadic. I do write most days. I'm nowhere near as prolific as you are. So sometimes, like yesterday, I wrote 2 lines down because these lines came to me. And then it sat there all day. I mean, I'm sure the idea was sort of gestating. And then this morning, I was up at 7 o'clock this morning and in front of the computer writing it down, and the whole thing sort of came out in one sitting. But no, I can't. I am an isolated writer. I do shut myself off. I mean, we said before about music, and I can only have instrumental music on. I definitely couldn't have a television on. And Natalie is not normally around. It's I tend to go into a bubble a little bit, and I think maybe that's because the type of things I write about, and I think because definitely the last 3 books I did, which were Fly Tipping, Driftwood, and now Beacons, which is coming out soon, they deal very fundamentally with a thought process, and I tend to get stuck in that thought process when I'm writing them. So yeah, a lot of time for me it is quite sort of isolating. I mean, I'm always up and saying to Nat, "What do you think I've got something, or do you not think I've got something?"
I got you.
Because otherwise, you can get lost in your own thoughts, can't you? And it's a dangerous thing.
Definitely. Well, shut of a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, especially if I'm writing something sort of melancholy, then that mood is with me then for a good couple of hours normally until she goes snap out of it.
Yeah.
But I tend to, but it's odd. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, and I'd like to say that I'm this quiet, whimsical guy, and I talk a lot about my bench in Scotland, you know, and how I write on that. And but some of the ideas I had were when I was in New York last year. I was in the middle of the busiest city in America, I think, and ideas were just popping in my head because you hear sounds and you and you respond to that. And I think that's the nature of what we do. I think the nature of what we do is it can't sit in there. It can't stay in there. It has to come out. Whether that's a person that you're writing about or a place or an event, you know, it has to come out. I mean, and a lot of my stuff in a lot of my books, I actually write about writing poetry, how writing poetry makes me feel, and how, you know, poems can be things of nightmare sometimes because it gets you up in the middle of the night. And I know sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, I know if I don't write it down then, it's gone, and I don't want it to be gone, because it's a wave, it's a thought, and I think that's why it's interesting from my perspective, and why I enjoy talking to you, because I know your process, and I know that your stories and your poet, they sit there, right, and you've got them. So much of what I write isn't like that. No. So much of what I write is that it's that little instant, that feeling, that thought.
It's in the moment with you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I have to write it then.
Yeah, you know, you go back to Mike Peters's poem. What I like to do when I write a poem, especially if I write it for somebody, like I'm doing a lot of poetry at the minute for the Shot at Dawn remembrance of the people who were shot at dawn in the First World War. And obviously there's a remembrance service every year because they've all been pardoned. So a fella who runs the site has asked me to write poetry in relation to certain soldiers. And, you know, I don't find it difficult to write about a bloke who's been shot at dawn, because what I basically do, I try to put myself in his position. So if he's like 17, you know, I like to think what a 17-year-old was like in the First World War. You know what I mean? I know what a 17-year-old is like now, but what was it like then? I try to put myself in that, frightened, didn't know what he was fighting for. So that goes in the poem, and then you got the business then of the 12 who shoot him. You understand me? One has got a blank bullet and that type of thing, and they put a thing over his heart and a blindfold. He's tethered to a post, and I got all that in my head. And I get the first couple of lines, and I just go on from it. It's like the Mike Peters one when I sent you the draft of it, and I hadn't put in about the charity work, and then you came back, and I listened to you. I don't say, oh, I'm not putting it in. You know what I mean? Because it does add to the poem. And like within 10 minutes, I've sent you another verse. And in the last line of that, you say, well, he's a rock star. And so you change the word, fit in with the other three lines. So when I write poetry for other people, I am not afraid to send the poem to them and say, what do you think of it? That's the rough draft. If there's anything you want to change, just let, because as you know, it's easy to change. You know, you just read through it again and think, what's the word that should be then? Or that's like when I wrote for Ray Gravel, I sent that to Roy Noble, who's a very big family friend of Ray's family. And I sent him the full draft. And I told him to look at it, because he's Welsh speaking, up in Aberdeen. And then he comes back and he's quite apologetic. I said, don't apologise. If you want things changed, just tell me. And he sends about 3 or 4 things. He said, I think perhaps something should go there, or that should come out. So I just take it out or put it in. And then I send him then the final draft. And then he said, that's it. That's it. I'll give it to Meir for her to look at, and I'll let you know if it can go in the book. And then within a day, Meir said, with her blessing. And then I went up to meet Roy then. I took him the book up for the family, to sign, and I took Roy my poetry. I said, "There's my 3 for you to have," and he gave me one of it. Usual thing, and it's like a swap shop.
Yeah.
You know, well, have one. You give me. I'll have one of mine now, and he signs one.
Mm.
And then you read his book, and the thought process gone behind that. You know, because he's a teacher, obviously, and very funny. You know, that type of thing, anecdotal, and you can pick up from these things, but. It's all in like with the books, like I tell you, it's all in my head. You know, since I spoke to you like an hour ago, I've just done a chapter, which is like 1,200 words, because I know what the chapter is. I know what I want to put in it.
Yeah.
So, and as I'm writing it, I'm reading it. It's just flowing out. It's just flowing out. And then what I do, I won't read it straight away. I get on to the next chapter, and then I go back to that one and see how the flow is into the next chapter, and invariably they flow together. So, note-wise, I make it's like colloding, isn't it? You know, you know that type of thing. And your poem on Mike is different to mine, but they sum the bloke up.
Yes.
You know, they jigsaw together, don't they? You know, you read that one, and you get the business of what did he call himself? Oracle House, you know.
An unsafe building.
An unsafe building. Now, if you don't know about Mike Peters, you don't know what that means to him.
Yeah.
But if you go on one of his documentaries or interviews, he comes out with that. He said, "I'm like an unsafe building," you know, or I got slapped in the face by what's the group? Johnny Rotten's group. I got smacked in the face. Sex Pistols. Woody Guthrie. David Bowie, influenced by these people. Now, if you're a Mike Peters fan, you know all about that because you've read about him. And if you've listened to his songs, you know what I mean? So that's how I look at it. So when I'm writing about an individual, I've got to know basically a bit about them. But once you read it, you know, I don't make any notes about it because I've already read it. So I'll get that first couple of nights, it'll just flow into their life, basically. Yeah,
I think what I'm seeing from the conversations we're having, and we do, I mean, for people that watch this, you and I talk most weeks, you know, a couple of times a week. So it's not, you know, it's not an odd thing. But I think what I'm, as we going on and we're talking more, I think the difference, one of the key differences is, I think your content forms in your head, whereas I think mine tends to form on the page. So sometimes I'm almost, and this is going to sound really arty and it's not meant to, but sometimes you're almost a ghostwriter for your own thoughts, and your thoughts come out, and so I write on a page, and then I go back through it and I go, that comes out, and hopefully what I'm left with then is something that describes the thought process that I've had, is able to hopefully can strike a chord with the person that's reading it. And you know, but then again, that's assuming that I want them to understand. Exactly. It's what you want them to feel, isn't it? Yeah. You know what I mean? All I want when people read my poetry, I enjoy that. Or I understand that. I don't want them to read like 5 verses of my poetry and think, what is this man talking about? Yeah. You know, I had a friend contact me, I haven't spoken to him for, I don't know how long, 40 years. And he said, I love your poetry, Arthur. No, I didn't even know he was reading my poetry. He said, I love your poetry. Because it's poetry, I call it poetry for the common man, I do. That's what I call it. But I shouldn't be really saying common woman as well. Because, we're all, you know what I mean? I woke up the other morning, Chris Needs is dead. Yeah. I write a poem. Half hour, I've done a poem for him, right? Because when I was listening to one of his programs last year, I think it was, I'm quite common, he said. You know, I'm quite common, really. You know, and that's the way the man was. How he helped people, you know, people would ring him late at night, people living on their own. Yeah. Talking to them, you know what I mean?
so you've got to try to get that over in a poem then. And once people who know him read it, they say, that's him. Yeah, that's him. That's him. And that's all you want.
That's interesting, because that doesn't happen to me very often. The last time it happened to me, and this will lead in the first poem of the piece, because I think I'll go first this time. Normally I let you go first, and then I come in, but I'll have a go this time. And that happened to me when I heard the news that Anthony Bourdain had died.
Yeah.
And I found it got me, really got me. And when I wrote about it, well, I'll read you what I wrote about him now. And it's not really, I'm not really writing about the fact that he was a TV celebrity, and I'm not really writing about the fact that he was a chef. But what I loved about him was his ability to tell a story.
That's right.
And so I'll read this one, and then maybe we can jump into one of yours then. But this is unpublished at the moment. I'm hoping to have this published by the end of the year. And I've called the poem
Which year?
2045, this one. It's just in time for my centennial. So this poem is called Raconteur. It's a short poem, but it really describes how I felt when I read that news and how I felt in the hours after it. There is a tragic sadness when the world loses stories. And he was triumphant in a tale's fabric weave, with a presence hinging on witchery. It is blander here without you, chef, and poorer, because at times I have waited like an expectant parent for your tales, those succulent wordscapes of nature's drapery. And I mourn now for the waiting tales that won't be told. So I've written that that's about Anthony Bourdain, but in a sense it's not. In a sense, that poem is about my sense of loss of Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
But I feel inside it that what I've done is I've actually shaped and kind of told people who he was, or at least who he was to me anyway. And who he was just this incredibly charismatic storyteller who I could watch for hours and hours and hours on television.
Well, there are loads of individuals. Like I go back to Christie. If you listen to him on the radio late at night, you know, it's like as if he's one of the family to these people who are ringing up. Yeah. And they're ringing from all over the world. More so elderly people who perhaps are on their own, who are there in the night, 11 o'clock. Like we used to listen to Radio Luxembourg under the sheets when we were young. These elderly people are in the house on their own, and they put Radio Wales on because Chris Needs is on it. Out in his garden club, that type of thing, you know what I mean? And I listened to Mal Pope took it over a couple of nights ago, and you listen to the people ringing in, and they've all got their different descriptions of him, all got their different feelings about him, and there's so much material there to write about him. You know, you could write 40 verses about him if you want to. But I like to keep it to about 5 verses. 5 verses, anything after 6, 7, 8, 9, I think people just lose it a little bit. So I think 5's enough, as long as you can hook them straight away. Like with the Mike Peters, what I tend to do when I write about certainly an individual, I'll put the first verse on, and I'll put any ideas. That's why I disqualified you yesterday. Any ideas, right?
Well, I was convinced it was Barbara Cartland you were writing.
So I won't put the title on it, because once I put the title in, they'll get it, won't they? And I knew who the first bloke would be to get it. I knew, right, of my group, of my members. So I put the first verse on there, right? Tom Jones.
Yeah. James Dean Bradfield was one.
Shakin' Stevens.
Yeah.
All these names came up, you know what I mean? But not Mike Peters.
No.
Until Chris, who's a drummer.
Yeah.
Right? Once I put another verse on, boom, out he comes. I know he is. And then once you start putting in about the camo jacket, well, that's the end of it.
Well, I mean, he blazed the path really for Welsh rock music.
Well, of course he did.
For everything that he went through in the 80s. I mean, and this was long before, the Manic Street Preachers, the Stereophonic, Gorky's Zygotic Monkey, Catatonia, before all this cool Cymru, Super Furry Animals, I won't forget them. Before all that cool Cymru thing started, it was Mike Peters was the man flying the flag, and doing it incredibly well. When you look at who they performed with in the 80s, they performed with Queen, U2, Status Quo. I mean, they're still massive in America now. So we forget sometimes the juggernaut that the Alarm was.
Yeah, and the other thing, what I try to get in my poetry is when somebody reads it who doesn't know who it is, I like to think they go on the computer and actually, who's this bloke in? Now, I think the majority of people yesterday knew it was Mike Peters, but obviously until you give them the hook, they got so much going on in their head. They're thinking, Shirley Bassey, Tom Jones, who else we got? Who else is he writing about? A Welsh rock king, like, you know what I mean? Well, it can't be many about, can it? No. There's only one, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones came after. You know what I mean? They've come after. This bloke was the epitome of the Welsh rock king.
Yes.
So, like, I like to think yesterday people went on, and then the next thing is cancer, is this, and there's a documentary on him. Let's have a look at that then. And then they listen to him talking, telling about himself, about other people, and you just spread it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like to think that my poetry, the way I write it, does that. I like to think that, like Culloden, people have gone in touch with me. Well, I never knew about Culloden. I heard about it, but the way, and then you were poem on it as well, and just to make people, there's more to poetry than meets the eye, like.
Yeah, I think it's great if you can, if the poet can deliver enough that, especially that people would go away and learn more about it.
Yes.
And sometimes when I write, I try to write so people may go and learn something, or find out about something, and then sometimes it's about I like them to go away and think about something. I like to present an idea or a concept, and not that I'm trying to lecture you in any way, but it's sometimes I want to go, well, actually, have you ever thought about that like this? And I think if your writing's engaging enough, then you will do that. And I mean the stuff you write, which is authentic. There's no other way around it. But it's, like I said to you before tonight, it's a ship in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's that little bit of, well, this is what I need to know, and it's written in the medium that I enjoy, because it's written, in lyrical form. But actually, I probably want to know a bit more about that, so I'll go get a book, or I'll go research it somewhere else. So I think that's the power of the medium. I think that's the power of poetry. So with that in mind, are you going to give us a poem or not?
Well, we said we'd talk about work, etc. Present day and years ago. I'll go to my coal mining one, because obviously that's industrial.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, my father's a collier. Two of my brothers are colliers. My uncles, my grandfathers, and I vaguely remember the first time I saw my father's blue scars. I didn't know what they were. I was so young. I didn't know what these blue marks on my father, and so I thought, when I was writing the book, I thought I'll write a poem about the blue scars, and you know what I mean? Any sort of it's only four verses, but anybody from a mining background can relate to it. And I remember my mother washing my father's back, and his back was bleeding, his hands were bleeding. They were only little nicks, they were. But obviously, when she's washing him down then, and he's telling me, they'll turn blue, they will now, which they did. In a year's time, anyway, that cut was a blue scar. And I call it the blue scars.
Okay.
Those marks on your hands, what are they, Dad? Don't worry, they are nothing, he said. Like badges of honor, he wore them with pride. I just stared. I was mystified. Whilst washing his back, I saw many more, so deep, all over his torso. They bled for days. He never complained. I thought my dad was an absolute hero. As I got older, I spent more time with men. Those badges, they all seemed to carry. A bond for life, I later realised. They are stories and lives in reprise. The coal and the dust, they made the scars. A film they would make some years later. You all know its name, Blue Scar it became. Even today, they bond all miners together. So what I wanted to get in, so when somebody reads about the film Blue Scar, I like to think that they'd go on a computer, look at a blue scar, and it's there more in vision. But I remember my father, washing his back, you know what I mean, never complained. And then when you were down the club, when you're older, you see them there with their cuts on their hands and, that type of thing, especially in the summer when some only had a vest on, and you see them on their arms and their tops. And then they had their tattoos, didn't they, you know what I mean, or blue light. But so that's the sort of poem in relation to hard work, dangerous work, and those are the scars. And like I say, they wear them like tattoos. They're proud of them, Look at me, I was a miner. This is what lumps of coal have done to me coming from the roof, which is what most of it came. They drop on top of them, you know what I mean. But that's that one in relation to sort of industrial work, hard physical work underground. For my father he was cutting in a seam just over 2 foot high, crawling on his side, hewing the coal out, you know what I mean. And you can imagine, if anybody can imagine what it's like to throw a load of coal in. You can cut your hands just chucking coal in. So God knows what it was like underground, when you hewing away and bits of coal are falling on you. But there we are. They accepted that was part of their profession, I suppose you can call it. But so that was, it's only a short one, but I think what I tried to do was sort of a bit of personal and a bit of sort of have a look at that,
No, that was powerful. That's a lovely, lovely poem.
Yeah. So thank you very much. But you know what I mean. That's what I tried to do. Make it authentic, make it sort of, and for people to understand. When or visualize it. Shut your eyes and visualize my mother washing his back, or me. In the valleys, it was a common thing.
Yeah.
If you didn't wash on the baths, you'd come home and go in the bath, a tin bath. So there we have. Anyway, what else we got? Let's crack on with something else. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got Speaking of places, let's see what we got. Yeah, I think I've got an old mining town poem here.
Yeah.
To remember which book it's in. I think it's in this one. Yeah. So, on the same sort of subject matter, this is as you know, I was born in Penrhyckyber.
Yeah, I played soccer up in Penrhyckyber.
Yeah, in the
hardest nails up ever.
Yeah, and so I remember little bits, but when I was very young when all that was going on. But I mean, when I wrote fly tipping, and my father still has my grandfather's lamp check number. It was 374 was his lamp check.
Yeah,
my father still has that, and there's a way to look at mining. There's the nostalgic way of the work that it brought to the towns, and the sense of meaning that comes from work, which we all take as human beings. I think work gives us purpose. But then there's the impacts of it, the health impacts on individuals. There was the impacts on the valley. I mean, I was up in the Rhondda Valley last week. I went to visit my cousin for his birthday, and I haven't been up there for maybe 20 years, and I just couldn't believe how green it all was. And where I'm from, my parents live in Cumbark now, you know, and the furnace site in Abercrombie, they used to be there. I mean, that valley was black, you know, it was dead. But to see that lush and green now is an incredible thing. But where Penrhyn Pit was is now what they call Glassbrook Fields, and it's green, and you know they've built some houses on it, but it's all green now. It's like almost like it didn't happen. And so I wanted to write something for Lamp Check 374, and I wanted to write something to sort of say this is kind of what I remember a little bit of, and how things have changed from what they were. So I've imaginatively called this poem Penrhyn.
Okay.
So this is my attempt at mining poetry. So please don't laugh at me. The earth first crowned in 72, long before Glassbrook would lay on fields. The valley poured in men and boys, lamplights licking at the black seam paths, beneath wooden head, crude and strung, dragging bloated drams winding and creaking. The deep shafts trove, carved out and summit bound. Arched and bent, striding paths beneath rooftop beams, carved from hilltops green, they foraged in the black, living, breathing the earth's slow floating dust, swirling in sunken inky clouds in newborn sweaty ducks. The unearth birthed the village, with walking hordes of swarthy men, awash with the seam's dusk tan, filing out and filing in, feeding the earth's gaping flue, gorging carts with auric rock, mining lifeblood with blood-stained hands.
Yeah, you listen to that, and anybody from a mining background can understand that.
Mm.
You mean it's there, the dust, this, you know, it's there, you know, you just put it together, and then you visualize the scene, basically.
Mm.
I used one poem, like hordes of black ants coming down from the top of the pit, which they were. If you looked up as a youngster and saw all these men coming down, they're like black ants. They're covered in it. You know what I mean? Coughing and spluttering, whatever they were doing. So yeah, you know the description is fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, but like we discussed work and stuff now, and I'll read one, you know, from my World War I book, Headwin. Now, he was a shepherd, and he went to war for his brother. His brother was supposed to go, but he went instead of him, and he never came back, obviously. But this man was a poet, a writer, and he'd be tending to the flocks on the hillside where he was living on the farm, and he'd be writing poetry. Not a care in the world. The next thing, he makes a decision, he's not going, I'm going. He never came back. So he goes from being a shepherd and a poet and a literary man to a soldier in the First World War, and never comes back. Wins the Bardic chair posthumously. They didn't even know he was dead. Headwin. So again, you know what I mean, you can go back many, many years and look at the work that these people did. Like my father was a miner, hard manual graft. Then you got Headwin, a literary man, a poet, a writer, who used to sort of do his job on the mountainside with the sheep. Tranquility, unbelievable. You know what I mean? Perhaps you want to try to do it. You'll find a field of sheep and just sit there and write a poem. I don't know what it must be like to be like Headwin on the mountainside with his water, watching his sheep and writing. Yeah. Like you say, you like to write alone.
Yeah.
No, I probably couldn't do that. I probably couldn't do that. To sort of sit in the field and write or whatever. But he did. And I thought I'd write a poem about him. So this is the one, Headwin. Blessed peace, that's what it means, obviously. Well, you speak Welsh, don't you? Blessed peace. Number 20. Yeah, Headwin, right? On that bleak western front, he took his last breath. A Welshman of peace, a bard heaven blessed. Prose was his passion, nature, religion, romance. Default conscripted to the battlefields of France. Tending his flocks, poetry passionately flowed, like cool mountain springs, his legacy bestowed. The shepherd of Passchendaele is who he became, a Welsh national treasure, now shrouded in fame. At the Western Front, Arwr, the heroes finished. During that futile war, passion never diminished. His life was cut short on the first day of battle. At Pilken Ridge he did fall, with brave comrades like cattle. With brothers in arms amongst gore-ingrained mud, a shell to the stomach released entrails of blood. Do you think I will live? On his deathbed he uttered. No hope of survival, as bursting shells thundered. At the National Eisteddfod, Fleur-de-Lis, will you rise? Your poem, Arwr, has won our ultimate prize. Not many knew Fleur-de-Lis had sadly fallen. Tears and applause was their ultimate calling. The bardic chair was shrouded in black, a posthumous honour, if only time could turn back. Those poetic seeds sown on pastures so green, creating a man of compassion, never again to be seen. This once humble shepherd, a lifelong desire achieved, now laying peacefully at rest in a far foreign field. At blessed peace, our poetic Welsh prince lies alone. His black bardic chair proudly sits in his home. So, you know what I mean? 1 minute he's tending his sheep, he's on the way, and he gets killed on the actual first day of battle. A lot of people didn't know he died, and he received the bardic chair, which was his ultimate. That's what he wanted to win. That's why he was writing his poetry and stuff. You know what I mean? So you got the futility of the war. You got the literature, the passion, the love, the peace, and then it's like an amalgam. And that's what I tried to do when I wrote that one. I tried to sort of put it all together. You know, who he was, what happened to him, and where he is now. Obviously, he's in some cemetery abroad now. I don't know. But that's Headwin.
Lovely piece, mate. Lovely piece.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? Times have changed so much, you know. Like I grew up in the 50s, 60s. Times were hard then, obviously. You know, I think most of the families were like 4, 5, 6 children. Some had more. I think my mother was one of 8. My father was one of 8 as well, I think. So today now it's usually 2, 3 at the most. Yeah, times were hard then. And we're going through this period of time at the minute where times are hard for everybody now.
Yeah.
More so. I speak to Caroline about it, about mental health. And I often wonder the mental health today and the mental health in the 50s and 60s for these people. You know what I mean? Was there any? I don't know.
No, I mean, probably not. I mean, you know, I talked to my mother and my father about it. And my mother, you know, when, you know, and she's quite open with it. And she says, you know, when they talk about poverty these days, and, you know, when she was growing up, you know, looking at it now, it was poverty,
Unbelievable.
But I think expectations were different.
Of course they were.
I think life outlook was different. And, I think I don't want to use the phrase simpler times, but I can't think of anything more correct than that. I think it was streamlined. I think there's so much noise now in modern times with television and computers and smartphones and there's expectations of things, and we rarely I think that's been one of the benefits maybe of the recent pandemic, is we rarely stop to actually break things down to their very basic form. And and for all the technology hasn't gone anywhere. We've all had it. We've all had the television and the movies and the music and the social media and all that has kept going through this, but people are unhappy because they're missing their families. They're missing the basic pieces of life. And it's I think sometimes, and hopefully this has encouraged people to do it, sometimes you've got to stop and think, well, actually, what is it that I need to be happy? And and you need your life, and you need to be healthy, and you need your family, and you need probably work to give you meaning and purpose. And that's been the only thing that's been taken away for a lot of people over this, apart from the public servants and the NHS. So I think they've done an amazing job, and the police are still be working and all that sort of stuff. But the actual basic building blocks, sometimes a quieter life is a nicer life and a better life, because it's very easy to, you see people that go into work and they're tied to their work diaries, and they go, oh, I've only got 5 minutes between calls, and it's like, it's so hectic, it's so noisy that you never get the opportunity to stop, right? And maybe that's the thing. I mean, like Headwin in the field with his sheep, that is such a basic piece of tranquility. He loves his writing. He has his writing. His flock are there, which is his job. And, he's distilled everything in the life down to that one little moment, that perfect, like when they dilute something down into nothing, it's a concentrate of what happiness is. And you can do that with poetry. You can do that with a piece of poetry, because you create a sense of place and time. And sometimes you create a sense of noise, but life, like everyone's buzzing about like bees, and fighting to get on trains and struggling on buses and commuting, taking an hour to commute 5 miles in a car because there's that much traffic about, and of course your mental health will suffer, because it's all entombing, isn't it? You're just wearing life, not living it. And so I think that the clever people will will take this period of enforced silence, but they should take it as a positive and as a learning curve. And
I think what it's done, it has slowed people down. Like I said, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and the pace was the same. Your routines were the same. I'm one of 6, and I'm the third eldest. So obviously, as I grew up, like you get up in the morning, especially in school holidays, you get up in the morning, you have your breakfast, and you're out. Where you going? We're going up the field, up the forestry, whatever. And they never worry you. Off you went. Off you come back for your dinner, then you're out again. Then you come back for your tea, and you're out again, especially in the late nights. And it was a nice pace. You weren't rushing around everywhere. Oh, I got to do this now, and I got to do that later. You did things as they arose as a youngster. You 1 minute you're up the park on the swings, you think, oh, let's go pick the wimbledon, and off you go.
But you're so reachable now as well. I mean, I went for a walk over the bay the other day, and about halfway over, I realised I'd forgotten my phone.
That's right.
My first reaction was, I forgot my phone. And then within 5 minutes, I was like, I forgot my phone. And I sat there and I spent time and I looked. I didn't take any pictures of anything.
No.
I didn't have any text messages or phone calls or emails. And you just go, wow, you know, there's a sense of freedom to it, you know, and
Exactly.
we don't do enough with that. We don't do enough for that.
Well, I leave mine in the house. Sometimes I do. I just don't take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just leave it here. You know what I mean? But I think the pace of life today is extreme, extreme, and I think that, as I say, I think that you've got to give your mind time to regenerate. I think it is. And I don't think people can do that today. The other thing I find with young people today is everything is a crisis. You know what I mean? Like you say, if they can't find their phone, it's a crisis. It's where they chop their hand off. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a phone. You know what I mean? But to them, it's a massive thing. Like, what am I going to do? And it tends to I don't know what it does to the brain, but it must get it going into overdrive. And I think that's a lot to do, especially, and I don't think they can cope. But that's the pace of life and the way things are. Like you say, everything, the telly, Netflix, this, that, and the other. There's so much to absorb.
Yeah, there's. I mean, it's weird that there's so much investment in this, because really it's the lowest form of communication you can have.
Oh.
If you walk around and see somebody and knock on the door and have a chat to them, then that's there's effort involved to see someone and communicate, and there's value in that. But send and the same by ringing somebody, I guess there's some sort of commitment to that emotionally. That's high level interactions. But to communicate through a social media platform, to get likes or shares, and then or the text message, it's such a low level of emotional engagement.
There's nothing, is it?
No, and I find it hard to understand how you can take any value from that.
Yeah.
I would much rather have a conversation the way we're having it. I'd rather have this conversation over beer, over a table.
Well, exactly.
But this is how we do it now.
Which was like in the valleys, the men were in the pubs and the clubs, the women were in the lounge on their own. The men were in the bar, the women were in the lounge, and they're all having a natter, and there the twain would meet. Then they meet at the door to go home. That type of thing. But it was all verbal.
Yes.
One-to-one. You mean? You take this pandemic now, especially with the NHS. Prior to the pandemic, nobody actually cared about the NHS. Let's be truthful. When I say they didn't care, they didn't think a lot of it. Right? Now, once the pandemic occurred, well, they're the finest thing since sliced bread. I can guarantee you, once this is over, they'll go back to like it was, because that's how fickle we are today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything's all right at the minute. Give them a 12-month, and it'll be the same with every organisation, whether it be the police force, whether it be teaching, whether it be nursing or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I find people today very, very fickle. Now, I go back when I was growing up. The policeman, the doctor, the nurse, the this, the that. They were all like the glue. They were the glue of everything. You know what I mean? Everybody respected, and I think that's gone. We've lost that because of the hurly-burly of everything. It's just fragmented, and
we don't have time to stop and appreciate what we have.
Exactly.
I mean, I was in Australia for 9 years, and when I came back, and we drove into those Welsh Valleys when I come back, and I think I viewed it as a tourist would view it. And I went, everything was so lush and green, and you just go, well, why do people say things about these valleys? Look at it. My friend came over from New Zealand, and he couldn't believe it. He said, but you live on mountains, and it's green, and the scenery is incredible. And I took him up to the top of the Mardi, and we were looking down, and he was like, "This is amazing." He said, "I mean, he said, you know, we hear the Welsh Valleys are terrible places, and he said, but they're not. He said they're beautiful, you know, and I think sometimes you have got to stop and, you know, seize the day a bit and have a look and appreciate what you've got, you know.
But then you go in, like you say about Scotland, the Highlands and stuff, right? It's not so bad because it's so vast and open spaces. But you go up to, like you say, like up to Cairo when you see it all. But then I akin it to like a pie. It's got a nice crust, and then when you cut into it, you think there's something missing you. And the thing that's missing now, Valleys, is work.
Well, I mean, there's no, you know, there's no disputing that the industry up there is not there, and it's a big change because, you know, at the end of the day, your job for a long time, for many generations, was at the end of the street.
Of course it was.
And then it becomes a bit different, you know. But so and sometimes you've got to search further afield, and but yeah, it is something that's missing up there, and you know, I would think, you know, I'm not going to get political about it, but
no.
I would think that, you know, after, you know, 80 or 100 years of, you know, Labour Party representation, you know, the party of the people and the workers, that they you know, and we've had several Labour governments now, but you think they would have put work into those places, but it hasn't happened, is it?
I think what's happened with certainly, look, we've lost our industry. We can't make anything anymore. Everything is sourced from China and places like that. Like Caroline's radio went off day for yesterday, right?
Yeah.
New batteries in it. It's electric one, obviously. So on the batteries, it's the plug. She only had a couple of months, right? It's made in China. You may as well throw it in the bin. Right now, years ago, right, if you were in a village and something like that, you take it to the local ironmongers and he'd repair it. You can't take them apart to get at the wires, and all that's probably wrong with it is a wire inside have come adrift, but you can't get at it.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that once this is all over, that we actually do go back. The way we eat is going to change, isn't it? You know what
Yes.
I mean? Certainly the way we shop has changed, me and Caroline. We click and collect on a Thursday from Tesco, don't get out of the car. We collect the meat from the estate. Caroline just gets out. They order it first. You go there, boom, boom, back in the car. Fruit and veg went down this morning, 12 o'clock, took the boxes back for them, comes out the fruit and veg. 10 minutes. Whereas, you know, when you're in Tesco's, it's like hour and a half, 2 hours.
So you're not eating bats anymore?
No, I think
bats.
Bats and rats. But you know what I mean? So certainly our way has changed. Now they're on about the second pandemic. Now, if we do, me and Caroline carry on the same way we are.
Yeah.
Because we've adhered to what they wanted us to do. I think you'll have small businesses opening up, especially food-wise, where you just pick the phone up. Can I have 2 pizzas and a bag of chips? And 10 minutes later, the bloke's delivering. You just click the card, happy days. So young people, like entrepreneurs, can start these businesses up, but help them as well, mind you.
Yeah, you have to. You
know, if you've got 2 young entrepreneurs who want to go into the food business, give them a unit or whatever to start and say, right, there's your unit, there's your machine, you know, it's up to you now.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it, don't you? I mean, you definitely see it, and you know, people talk about, especially the valley towns, you know, the high street, and they go, "Oh, it's a shame what's happening to our high street," and you just go, "Yeah, but you don't shop there.
No,
you shop in supermarkets. If you want to save the high street, you have to shop there."
Of course, well, Jen's a typical example.
And you know, I'm not saying it's entirely people's fault, because ultimately it's capitalism, right? So your shop needs to sell something that people want to buy, and at the right price. But you also can't complain and mourn the loss of something that you don't use. So, you know, it's a catch-22 situation. And I've heard people say that, you know, the other businesses are struggling and new businesses are, you know, small business. And I said, well, it's funny because I was in London about a year ago, and there was a young lady there, and she was making baby clothes. and she was making them in a very, I mean, I don't know much about baby clothes, but she was making them in a very specific way. And within 3 months of opening, she had another 2 shops in the London area, and her business is still growing. But she's making something that people are actually purposely going, I'm going to go to her to buy it. And, you know, and sometimes it's not good enough to have, you know, the third or the fourth tobacco vaping shop on the same street, or the fifth burger takeaway place on the same street. That's not what it's about. So, you know, there's a bit of everything to do with it, but you know, you've got to, I mean, it's the same with writing. Yeah, if you don't write something that people want to read, they won't read it, and you won't sell books.
And that's what's happened with poetry. Over the years. I think people have read poetry and thought, what is this about? What is this about? What is this? I can't get my head around what he's talking about. Like, it's like old English. I mean, and it's sort of, I read one this morning on a Facebook thing, and I thought, what is this about? Like, you know, it's a poem, don't get me wrong. It's well written, but I thought it's not for me.
No, there's I think when the you know, the new romantics and the postmodernists started to sort of get hold of poetry, which I think started in sort of the late 70s a little bit. The actual poetry itself morphed into something it was never meant to be. You know, we talk about Shakespeare, right? And you know, but you know, Shakespeare wasn't elitist in its day. He was just the best playwright in his day, and it wasn't just, you know, the upper classes that went to watch Shakespeare. The working classes were going to watch it. I mean, I heard somebody say, I think it's a bit disingenuous, but I'm sure somebody said it was the EastEnders of his day. And well, so that's not entirely fair. He's slightly better than that. But what he was writing was for the everyman. You know, it was for everyone to go and enjoy it.
That's right.
And but I think because it has, in a sense, now become, I think, in people's minds, this almost elite, you know, and elite thing. And sometimes people go, you write poetry? So yeah, I write a little bit of poetry. And they're like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like, so, well, you don't look like a poet. I said, well, what does a poet look like?
Well, I'm the same. I'm trying to grow a ponytail, see?
It's coming great, mate.
At the back. And I said, I think, and I go to, I said, can't I buy me a cravat, will you, love? You know,
mate, this time next year, be in status quo, mate. This time next year.
But yeah, you know, I've had blokes, Peter Griffith, so I haven't seen Peter since I was in school, right? 50 years, 54 years, and I'm back in touch with him now because, and he'd been reading them, see, and he said, "Where's all that come from, bud?" Because I never did anything in school. I was playing football most of the time.
Yeah.
You mean I wasn't interested in writing. Christ alive! I wanted to get out of school. I did.
Yeah.
I mean, and he said, most of our classmates are teachers and stuff. He said to me. But,
well, prove him wrong, bud. Let's prove him. Yeah. Right, we got one more each year, I think.
All right.
So, working men, people, places.
Yeah, well, I got one here. It's I wrote this about Caira, my
all right,
my own village, and we just talking about how things have changed. Like you're saying, you go back there now and it's reclaimed. The tips have been reclaimed, and this type of stuff. But I wrote this one. It's called "No, it's now but a memory," Caira, and it could relate to Penrith Khyber or anywhere where there was a colony. The village, once vibrant, work did abound. 3 times a day, the hooter would sound. Looked at the lanes, like black ants they marched, covered in dust, dry-mouthed and parched. Halcyon days in the valley of coal. Brave men gave their lives, bodies and souls. Childhood memories, so vivid and bright. The miners on top, a wonderful sight. They worked hard, drank, lived life to the full. Hard men they were, talked with no bull. My dad, small, sinewy and strong, in his mind's eye, miners could do no wrong. Let's not forget the mothers and wives nurtured the kids all through their lives. A breed that would stand up and fight, put up with so much when money was tight. I returned to my village a short while ago. Gone are the pits, there's nothing to show. Boarded up shops, all on the door. A community now ravaged, now with no soul. Like when I grew up in Cairo, there were three on my street alone, 3 butcher shops, 2 ironmongers, 2 paper shops, 4 general stores. That's on one street. I can drive up there now and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Not a shop.
Mm.
And I was sitting up in the car, I went up to see my auntie, and I was sitting up on the top line car and I was looking down and it was just dead. And that's like 11 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
And I can guarantee if I'd gone back 50 years and sat there, I'd have had the local going on the line. It'd be crawling up there. You know, it'd be kids out playing, all gone.
But you can, I mean, that's in the words. It's in the words of the poem, and it comes across in the tone of your reading of it as well.
Yeah.
So there's that nostalgic tone, but then there's the sadness of it as well. You know, and that's I think people forget that sometimes. That when you're writing, especially a piece of poetry, you're describing a place and a time or a person, but you're trying to create that feel of it as well.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and sometimes, I know I've said it a number of times, I've definitely said it with what I've written. I think some of the saddest poems and some of the saddest songs are some of the most beautiful poems and songs. Yeah. You know, because there's I think there's definitely beauty in melancholy and sadness and stuff like that. But you know, when you put that in with, you know, those very vivid, authentic memories as well, then you get something quite unique. And I wish more people would read it. I think I wish people would get involved.
My sister-in-law's father, Alan, when they bought him, especially the coal mining book, was actually crying when he was reading some of the poems. Now, Caroline will tell you, my sort of reading of poetry has got better as I've gone on. But I don't particularly like reading my own poetry. I prefer somebody else to read it. Because you got to get that sort of flow with it, and like you say, the change in the way you put it over. You know what I mean? It's melancholy 1 minute and there's a bit of humour the next, and you've got to emphasise each one. And I mean, when you listen to Hopkins and Richard Burton and Dylan Thomas reading their own, you know, reading poetry, it's there, you know, it's there, you know, when you will put there, and you know, and then the dulcet tones, you know, very quiet when you're doing a quiet poem. So I prefer people to, like Sean have done a couple of my poems, Sean Edwards. But I put a few of my own on the YouTube channel. I've done a few myself, like, you know. But I think the more you read it, but it's very difficult when you've written your own poetry, to read it. I think it is. You know, I prefer other people to read it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know if you feel like that. You know what I mean? Because you've got a nice voice. You've got a nice lilt to your voice. So you could read. I think you could read other people's poetry. You know, once you read it, you could read it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be happier reading other people's poetry than my own.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think you've got that tone for it. You understand me? And it's not a monotonous tone. I think I heard some poetry being read. It's a little bit sort of flat. It can be. Well, I think you've got to sort of like that poem I just read. Now there's a bit of melancholy in it, so you come down a bit, and then you hit another line which shoots you up a bit, and comes over in the voice, you know what I mean, rather than sort of monotone straight across.
Yeah,
It's like a song, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an odd one. I mean, it's like, I mean, I like Natalie, you know, is a much a fan of Seamus Heaney as I am, and you know, she loves his poetry. And recently, I was saying, well, showing her that I have these audiobooks of Seamus reading his own poetry, and she can't stand it.
No.
Now, I love it. I love it. I think the way he reads it, there's an Irish accent, you know, so when he talks about his ma and his da and all that, you know, it's a beautiful thing. But Natalie, because she read him for so long, she has created the soundscape of his poetry in her own head. So when she hears him read it, she's not getting what she wants.
You could tape Natalie reading it. Do you understand me? And like you compare the two, like, and say, well, you know, I mean, not which is the better, but that's how I see what I've read. And this is, he's reading what he's reciting what he's written. You know, I mean,
I mean, we have it with, you know, like people assume the sound of Dylan Thomas is Richard Burton.
Yeah,
that's what, and it's not. That's if you listen to Dylan reading his work, it's nothing like Richard Burton.
It's heavy. Dylan Thomas is very heavy. Very, very heavy, very heavy.
Anthony Hopkins, when he reads Dylan Thomas, it's very soft and it's almost like a nighttime lullaby.
Dulcet, yeah.
I mean, it's
like Burton when he does War of the Worlds, that type of thing. You know what I mean? It's there. They got this, but they're actors.
Yeah, Michael Sheen, same effect Michael Sheen has, you know.
Michael Sheen, you know what I mean? But it's let's have one in. Come on in.
Right. Okay. Well, I wore my PD hat.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd wrap us up today with a poem I wrote. I think we mentioned it last time, but I didn't have it at hand, which was a poem I wrote in New York on Manhattan.
Yeah.
Where again I was walking around and taking it all in and making notes, but again I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I went, oh, that's what I wanted to write, and then I wrote this at 3:30 in the morning in New York, and it's my interpretation, my description of what it's like to, if you're in Manhattan and you close your eyes, I think this is what it would feel like. So I've called this Manhattan 2019. To me, it formed a type of music, a polyphonic migration, staccato and punchy foundlings birthed the dirty corners and turning. It was filed and unorderly, flowering from wet and muggy streets, an aggressive lament that shaped a kind of whale song, a scented sound that rides on warming winds, street music, choking air on glowing staves that catch it, reflect it as echo and send it right into you. City veins clearing their throats in stunning entwined chaos. A beautiful noise, wafting, wrapping, and gripping.
Yeah.
So try to get that soundscape there of, you know, to me, that's the nearest I can get onto a page to beat in and have your eyes closed.
And then if some of your friends have read it and then they actually go to Manhattan, you know, shut their eyes one evening and think, get the gist of your poem, which they probably got, and go, oh, he's right. You know what I mean? See it in the day and then the visualization in the night. Yeah, it's good.
And thanks. But yeah, the key to it was the whale song. That was the key to it. Once I
not the Oregon whale.
No, nothing that's been blown up. My father's still laughing about that as well. No, but that was the key. That was the 3:30 in the morning thing. You know, because you go, what is it? And once I realized that all those horns and sirens and the way it echoes around, in my head I realized that it sounded like a whale song underwater, then the poem came.
Well, it's funny because when I write the books, like tonight now, I'll probably write, after I have food with Caroline, I'll probably write 2 chapters. So I got them in my head anyway, so they're out, they come on. I wouldn't think nothing about poetry. Because tomorrow I might come down and see something and I think I'll write a poem about that. I write it straight away, see. I don't sort of dwell for days over it. I write it straight away. And I got to finish it. And I got up the other morning and I just think in my head, this tune. So I came down and I had my breakfast and I did 5 verses. They're not rhyming. 5, 4, and I did a chorus. So I sent that off to Spain to my mate, Steve James. It's not a poem, it's a song, I think. Well, I think it is. I got it in my head. And I say, see, you can do that, Pat. And he will, see, because he does it in the house and he'll change it about. Like, he did Life on the Streets. I sent him Life on the Streets, the poem, you know. And within 2 days, he came out, oh, yeah, and it's beautiful. It is absolutely stunning, it is. I'm waiting to see what he does with that. But I haven't written it down anywhere. I just sent it to him. You know what I mean?
I hope he comes back. I hope he's written some sort of death metal to it or sort of.
He will, yeah. No, he's I call him the Welsh Julio.
Oh.
He lives in Spain. He loves music. Oh, he's written some songs. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, brilliant.
I said, you want to go around the clubs, don't you? Do I said with his thing and you know what I mean. But so I'm waiting to see.
Has he been on Benidorm? Has he been singing on Benidorm? Well, I've seen
get
him.
Down there. I'll get in that hotel with that transvestite. But there we are. Anyway.
Right, pal. We're running. Yep, we're out the time.
Lovely, bet.
All right. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always.
As always, yeah, no problem.
We will reconvene again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll be on Netflix next. That'll be the next thing.
Oh, yeah. Check it in the post.
Or Discovery.
Just History Channel.
Will we have royalties of them, I wonder? If we do.
I don't know. We can only hope.
Only hope.
Right.
But there we are, no problems. Oh, you look after, give me a love to Natalie, but.
I will maintain the Caroline. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Ta-ra, buddy.
Ta-ra, buddy.
Look after yourself.